So, Mr. City Attorney, thank you for the ordinance. Obviously, you took the council's direction at heart when we asked you to be somewhat restrictive, although I don't know if it was our intention to restrict it down to 2 locations in the entire city, as you've apparently done here. We've gone from a one-size-fits-all to a one-size-fits-none, but nevertheless, I'd like to, let's see, add 10 or 11 things here, and then I'll encapsulate these into a motion. First of all, I'd like to propose that we do have a CUP process associated with this. I think that will provide the appropriate level of discretion where locations are appropriate for these facilities and how many have discretion, so we don't allow with 4 on one block or in one community necessarily side by side. But if we're going to move forward the CUP, I would recommend removing a lot of the other restrictions that are in the ordinance, because again, we can handle it judgmentally on a CUP basis. Some of the things that I would propose removing is I would remove language where it talks about abutting residential neighborhoods. I'd remove that and allow the CUP to address that. I would further allow it in mixed-use corridors. I've also had some constituent input that while they supported the 1,000 feet away from schools that were obviously children-oriented, libraries and parks tend to be mixed-use. A lot of different people use libraries and parks, so probably remove those 2 from the 1,000-foot limitation. However, for high schools... I'm sorry, remove libraries and parks from your list. We've talked about 1,000 feet for schools. However, it's also been pointed out that with high schools, kids tend to congregate around their high school, which doesn't necessarily happen at the elementary school, middle school level. So from a high school perspective, have a 1,500 feet limitation, can't have it within 1,500 feet. I know that you did not include a cap initially since the ordinance was so restrictive, but if we are going to be more flexible, which will allow more locations, then I would recommend a cap. I'm going to use the number 18. The committee had talked about 9. I'm going to double that to 18, and we'll see what my colleagues think here. Another big issue, obviously, is patient privacy. So I would look to modify that and provide a better degree of privacy to patients than what's in the existing ordinance.
Yes, with regard, that's a very important issue. Would you allow us a certain degree of latitude to see,
yes,
to try to interpret what you've been saying in terms of not revealing the identity of a person, but yet allowing the city, involved city agencies to be able to know perhaps by way of an identification number or something of that
Agreed.
nature.
Be creative. I've also heard tonight from behind the rail as well as the public, it's very important for these businesses to allow to continue their business operations. You've talked about having a period of time before requiring that business license, so I would support that. I would look to you and business licensing and financial management to help us understand what appropriate amount of time is. Is it 30 days? Is it 60 days? Is it 90 days? What does the city attorney's office and staff recommend? I'd also like it if you'd look at whether or not it would be appropriate to perhaps require certain documentation in a 30-day period of time for those that want to start this process, since it may be a little bit laborious, but give them till 90 days, or again, what you think an appropriate number is to complete the process. I've also heard that there is a requirement and an appropriate use for edible. So I would say let's pull that out of the ordinance that you can't have edible. Let's make that available. However, it does need to be a certified kitchen, and that does need to be overseen by the health department. We're going to allow that. In regards to cultivation, it does appear somewhat limiting to limit that to only on-site at the collective. So to say cultivation could happen both on-site as well as at member homes, member locations. There's also been restrictive that nothing else can be dispensed other than the medical marijuana. And I guess I'd also like to recommend that we're not so restrictive, but we allow these locations to provide soil and nutrients, that if the members are going to grow, it would be appropriate that the establishment could provide soil and nutrients so that their members could grow off-site. I also believe the amount on hand needs to be enlarged, so perhaps we can do a little more study and review of what an appropriate amount is, but the 5 pounds seems to be too low. But if you could come back with a recommendation of a larger number and how you got there. I also think we need to be a little more restrictive on the odor. We've talked about that it can't be outside the building, However, one of the complaints we've already received in buildings with multiple tenants is that the medical marijuana establishment, the odor is impacting the business next door, which is part of the same building, but they're impacted by the odor. So I think we need to have some regulation for that prevents that from happening. And so I would make the motion to approve the recommendation to adopt or bring the ordinance back for a first reading, so we can have more public comment on this, as amended as I've outlined.
Second.
Thank you.